welcome to Pop Culture Yearbook. On this show, we pick pieces of pop culture that were important to us in a given year. We then discuss memories and dig into those movies, albums, shows, and more. I'm Brad.
I'm Pete.
And I'm Gif.
And tonight is And More episode. Right, guys?
And more. That's right.
We're switching it up. So we did, remember when we did that Vikings one? Gif, you weren't on that, were you?
I was not.
We're big sports fans.
Yeah,
And
we
the
are.
only sports team in this state that's ever really come through for us was the Twins. So, Pete, you picked it. Tell us all about this.
The last time that we did a sports episode, I was walking down the street and somebody said, "Hey, Pop Culture Yearbook guys, stay in your lane. That's not pop culture."
Well, Brett Favre kind of is.
Right. Of course, that didn't happen at all, but it would be pretty funny if it did, right? But so one of my biggest memories, if you knew me at all as a teenager and younger, you know how obsessed I was with Minnesota Twins baseball. And that was actually me and you guys and a couple of other friends. We were all pretty much obsessed with it. So our biggest memories together as friends and just sitting around the house, even as I've said on this show before with my own father, a lot of my greatest memories were just sitting down, listening to the radio, to Twins games, or watching them on TV, especially back in this era when you had the greats. You had Herb Carneal, John Gordon. You could be outside playing catch, doing it, whatever you wanted to do, having a drink or beer or whatever. Well, I didn't drink much at age 15. But that's
yeah, okay, buddy.
Just there really was nothing better. And when we talk about 1991, which is the year that we are talking about this month, really was the greatest year for all of pop culture, including sports, not the least of which being the 1991 Minnesota Twins, which not only won the World Series, but won probably the greatest, in my opinion, unarguably the greatest World Series in all of history.
Agreed.
Right. This World Series just had everything. And it had so many extra inning games, so many one-run games, and it came down to just a classic in Game 7, which we'll go into in great detail. But just nothing could possibly top the sports moment in my life, other than, of course, maybe the 1987 team, which was the first team to win it. And as Brad said, the Twins were the only team in our lifetimes of the four major sports to really come through. And they not only did it once, they did it twice with, heroes like Kent Hrbie, Hrbie Puckett. We'll talk about all these guys. So I'm really, really excited for this episode. If we're going to do 1991, it's hard to talk. It's impossible to talk about 1991 without talking about the Minnesota Twins if you are anywhere in Minnesota. And this was such a much better time for baseball than it is now, much more exciting. And, this year, as we're recording this, there's the lockout. And everybody hates the owners. A lot of people are mad at the players. They may not even have a season. Who knows what's going to happen? They're changing the rules. The rules are kind of dumb, in my opinion, that they're going to. But this was just back when it was a really carefree lifestyle, and it was appointment television almost every night during the summer. You would come home and you'd watch Minnesota Twins baseball in the background, or it would just be your primary thing. So very excited about this episode.
And here's the thing. Since 91, since this World Series, to show how bad it's been in the state, there hasn't been one of the major sports teams that has made even to the final Super Bowl, World Series, NBA Finals. Not even
Stanley
one
Cup
team
Finals
that made it one time and even lost. It is the longest, I think, streak by far of all the cities that have all four major football, hockey, baseball, and basketball. The longest one, pretty much by far, of that drought. So it's pretty important. And I will throw out
good teams. We've come close a few times, but
this is a great pick, Pete, because maybe it's not pop culture per se, but our Vikings one has done very well in the downloads category. So there's an audience out here for this.
Yes.
This is going to be even better. We have a market now.
Well, because they
in
actually
New
won.
York. That's
The
right.
Viking
Right.
season, of course, ended tragically. This one did not.
Yeah.
That's correct. Gifford, what do you have to say? What say you, Brian Gifford?
Well, I mean, I just remember watching these games, being excited for the season. Having that unbelievable worst to first situation going on where they came out of nowhere and turned it on. The pitching was amazing. Hitting was clutch throughout the season. And as that builds, back then I was still young enough, and with 87 still kind of fresh in your mind, you think, well, your teams, when they are good, they win. And they go on to win it all like they did in 87. So 91's coming, you're thinking this is our year again. Yep. It's, as Brad pointed out, in subsequent years, we've learned that even if you have a good team, that doesn't really mean squat in this state. So it's very fond memories of, watching this. And because we were sophomores in high school, correct?
Well, it's season started, we were freshmen.
We were freshmen, but the World
Series, we were sophomores, correct?
Yeah. Yep. So, yeah, a lot of fun.
Twins were the one team to do it the other way, where, I mean, the Vikings have had some great teams that should have made it. In 87, a lot of people say the Twins were not that great of a team, but they were a great home team, and they were able to string it together, and they got it done. But as far as World Series winning teams, when you look at winning percentage, the 87 team was not that great, but the 91 team was far superior to the 87 team, although both teams very fun to watch.
Right.
Yes. All right.
Well said.
Shall we talk about how this season came together first?
Let's do that.
We need to start with how the season ended the year before.
Okay.
Because again, you can't have the great.
All right.
Great Cinderella story.
You already mentioned that we finished in last.
Right. We finished with a 74 and 88 record, 28 games behind Oakland in our division. So
as did in last place, little
the
foreshadowing Braves. Here, the Atlanta Braves.
Yes. Right. The thing that to me stands out that made that year even uglier is that we got Kirby Puckett here, Hall of Famer, and he's in the prime of his career, and he's one of the best hitters in baseball. In 1990, that's the only year he batted under 300. He batted 298. He didn't hit very many home runs. He had low number RBIs compared to usual. And it's just like, it was just this blah year. Like, even he didn't do that well. And so things were not looking too hot coming out of that.
Right. But the offseason.
Yeah.
What happened between the 90 and 91 offseason to help turn that around?
All right, well, I got a whole bunch of notes here. I don't know if...
Yeah. Well, first off...
I'd love to hear it. You go for it. I'm sure you got more notes than I do. I've got a couple, but...
Well, the first big move was we let Gary Gaetti go. So he was the third baseman, and everybody loved Gary Gaetti, the G-Man, and he was the 87 ALCS MVP.
Yep.
But he was slipping a little, but losing him was a big deal.
Traded him to the Angels, by the way.
Yes, went to the Angels. They replaced him right away with Mike Pagliarulo, who was not anything special. He batted .254 with the Padres. He had 7 home runs. He had a stretch for 2 years with the Yankees in the 80s where he hit a ton of home runs. But really, he was not a very good player. But he was the replacement.
And too, wasn't he? I thought he was with the Mets. I thought he was with the Mets.
He bounced around. He was with the Yankees when he hit all those home runs.
He was with the Yankees when he hit the home runs.
And then he eventually also platooned with Scott Leyes, who nobody knew because he was a rookie. And here's the thing, every one of these moves worked out. Those two guys, Pagliarulo had like a career year, not the home runs, but it was his highest batting average ever.
His batting averge, yep.
And he filled the hole nicely. And Leyes, as a right-handed batter, as a rookie, wasn't amazing, but he's a great defender. And they did a nice job. They weren't Gary Gaetti, but they filled in and had good years. So that was
he was never with the Mets. By the way, I want to stand corrected. He was never with the Mets. He played for the Yankees, the Padres, the Twins, the Orioles, and the Rangers, and he also played in Japan. Anyway,
There you
go
go.
on, Pagliarillo.
The other big hole in the infield was second base. And ever since they made that terrible trade for Tommy Herr in 88.
Oh my God, I was so pissed. I remember that morning.
Yeah,
They
me too.
did what? They trade Tom Bernansky for this
Yep.
shit named Tommy Herr?
And he sucked. He didn't want to be here. And it was just a revolving door of crap. The year before, we had Nelson Liriano and Fred Manrique at second base off and on.
Well, and also Newman played second.
Yeah, well, and Al Newman was
He played everywhere.
Right, but
he filled in. But anyway, this was the year where they brought up Chuck Knobloch as a rookie straight from Double-A. So he was young. It was kind of risky, but he was by far the best option. Guess
Could
what?
still throw to
He
first
played
base.
a year, and he paid off just as great as everybody.
He did. He's amazing. Well, and we'll get to it, but in the playoffs, he was our best hitter.
As a rookie, he
from
was
top to bottom.
amazing in the playoffs.
Yep.
All right. The next big thing that happened, and this is where I'm going to have my excitement here. So this was the first full season of Shane Mack starting in the outfield.
Oh boy, here we go.
And he had a good batting average year before.
Oh, he was
did
good.
Well.
The thing
Yep.
is, so Johnny Moses, I think, was the starter at the beginning of the year. Shane Mack played most of the second half of the year, and he had a great year.
Mhm.
So it wasn't like a big surprise that he was starting, and it wasn't like, oh, this guy can't do it. It was just, can he do it again? Because he was kind of a young journeyman that came also from San Diego. But if you know me, like Pete said about knowing him, Shane Mack is my favorite athlete in the history of sports.
Did you have his jersey?
That's a strong
I have
statement.
a custom-made jersey. I still have it. I still wear it to games.
Yep.
I don't know exactly why, but I just connected with that guy. He was so cool and so fun to watch. And like my wife, who likes the underdogs, like Danny Wood of New Kids on the Block,
Yep.
I also root for the underdog. So I love Hrbie. Everybody loves Hrbie. You grew up loving Hrbie.
Right.
But Shane Mack, during his time with the Twins, was pretty much equal to Kirby Puckett and just never got the recognition and still fails to get the recognition that he deserves, except from true Twins geeks who know.
And he made some of the greatest catches in the outfield that I've ever seen. And of course, there's the one near catch that he almost made in '91 at Oakland. That
I saw that on the video we watched.
We'll get to it. Yes.
So anyway, and he did not start the year well. He was batting .238, I think, at the All-Star break. And the second half of the year, though, he just went off. And Peter Gammons, I remember, called him the MVP of the American League in the second half of the season.
Wow.
And he was superstar.
That's high praise.
Yeah, well, he was that good. It was that good. He was not the only young player who came on in 1990 and then jumped into a full-time awesome role in this season. Do you know who the next guy was?
The young guy?
I am.
Yeah, a second-year player. Not a batter, though. Pitcher. Pretty obvious enough. Pitcher.
Scott Erickson.
Scott Erickson.
Yeah.
So Scott Erickson,
I
I
think, had a decent year the year before. Yep.
Scott Erickson went 8-4 the year before, and also finished the second half of the year. This is a really strong rookie pitcher, and he came in and now is a full-time starter. And we'll get to him here during the season. But he was, he was a pop culture sensation in Minnesota for the first half of the year.
Right, and he was supposed to start the All-Star game. That's how good of a pitcher he was in the first half.
He got hurt, and then who did start?
Jack Morris. Okay, there you go. So we made two big offseason signings. These were all guys that came up or that were traded for, or I guess these guys were like Pagliarillo was picked up as a signing, but he wasn't a big signing. So Jack Morris. I didn't realize till we started this, he was the highest paid player on the team that year. He got more money than I thought. I always thought it was kind of like a 1 year, like he's a washed up, we're taking a chance. But no, he got a big contract. And I compared him to Brett Favre. He was that 1 year, so Brett Favre wasn't coming home, but like this superstar guy that had that magical year. but he didn't throw the interception at the end of the game 7.
No,
No,
didn't fold in the
Morris was
moment
a
of
little more
truth.
clutch
Right.
than Brett Favre was.
Yes.
And then there
Well,
was one other. Well, actually, there were 2 other signings. What was the other really big signing that we made in the offseason?
Chili
Davis.
Yes, Chili Davis.
Yes, sir.
And I love him too. He was one of my other favorite players because I loved him even before he came to the Twins. And you know what I noticed watching some of the videos? You know how all the great swings, like Will Clark, Henry, they're all left-handers?
Yep.
Chili Davis's right-handed swing is like the prettiest, and it's way prettier, in my opinion, than his left-handed swings. He's a switch hitter, for
Right.
anybody that didn't know.
That was one thing that was amazing about. He was a great power hitter. That was a switch hitter too, so
Yeah.
extra valuable.
When
Anyway,
he
go
got a
on.
hold of a ball right-handed, it was just an absolute bomb, and it was so pretty to watch. And he had a couple of those in the World Series, so we'll get to that.
Mhm.
There was one other signing, kind of under the radar, but he was actually a huge name at one time. Do you guys know who that was, Pete? Pitcher again.
It wasn't West, was it?
No, he came in the Frank.
Well, Rick Aguilera.
Oh,
Well, no, that was a trade.
No,
That
They
was
all
not a
came in the
signing.
Rick. They all came in the Frank
Yeah,
Viola trade.
Tapani and Aguilera came in a trade. So the other pitchers.
He
Who
won
else
a
do we
Cy
have?
Young in 1987.
Well,
Now-
boy, you're killing me here.
Oh, you don't remember?
I'm
Steve
thinking of it.
Bedrosian.
Bedrosian, yes.
Bedrock. He won the
won a
Cy Young
Cy
as a
Young?
reliever for the Phillies in 1987.
Wow.
And I look back, his stats were really good still. He was really like this kind of like under the radar, like, and he was good for us, but
Yep.
this is the guy that won a Cy Young 4 years before.
Right.
And he helped out too.
Wasn't he a great player in RBI baseball too? Wasn't he on that
He
game?
was on the game, yeah.
Right.
All
Do
right.
you
right.
know what else happened in the offseason?
That's all my
You-
notes, so take it away.
You have not. Oh, go ahead.
They moved their spring training facility to Fort
yeah.
Myers, Florida.
And it was
So
a
it was a
state-of-the-art
brand new
facility.
Yep.
Where were they before that? I couldn't remember.
Orlando.
Orlando. Okay.
Yep.
I have been to Hammond Stadium, and 1 year we went down to spring training with my parents and my brother and his wife. We went to Hammond Stadium. We went to one game, and then we also went to a second game. The next day, the Twins played at the Philadelphia Phillies Stadium, which was in Tampa, and the Phillies spring training facility was way nicer, actually. But you're right; that was their first year at Hammond Stadium. You left out what you have not mentioned. The player that, for me, was the under the radar kind of guy that was probably my favorite player that year, other than like the big names.
Was he a starter?
Part time, but more than not, yeah.
A
The
pitcher?
position usually, you usually switch out at this position. But
Oh,
Brian
Brian
Harper.
Harper.
Mhm.
Oh,
Yes.
he played in 1992. He was another guy that kind of came
He was
on.
he was on the 91 team, but
Yeah.
he was.
But I was talking
Um,
about these were all guys. But you're right. He came on in 1990 like Mack and Erickson. That's true.
Yeah, but he was definitely on that team. And he, for me, until Joe Mauer came along, was one of the best hitting catchers I've ever seen. And he was not a bad catcher. We had Junior Ortiz, who was the other guy who was actually a better defensive catcher, in my opinion. But Brian Harper was known for being a great two-strike hitter.
Two-strike
And,
hitter.
always could hit for contact.
And he wasn't known for his defense, but he had some memorable plays in the playoffs in the World Series that, I mean, you'll never forget.
Right.
And Junior Ortiz, a good defender, I guess, but he was not a good hitter at all.
So, no, not at all.
But
His
he
uniform number was
caught a
0
lot
for a
because he
reason.
caught every day that Scott Erickson started because they had
That's
some
right.
kind
It was
of
his personal catcher. It was
some kind of thing where Erickson liked him, and so that was Junior Joe Ortiz's day.
Scott Erickson was known for being very superstitious. They called when he pitched, it was called the Day of Death.
Well, I was going to get to that.
He always wore black. He was known for always wearing black when he pitched. And then you did not want to talk to him in the dugout while he pitched. It was just his thing. You leave him alone, and it worked out pretty well for him in '91.
he even blackened out the white stripes on his shoes so that everything but his uniform from head to toe was black. And yeah, it was the day of
jet
death.
black hair of his too. And he did. A lot of people thought he looked like Superman, which he
looked
does.
like Christopher Reeve.
Right. He would have made
and he had a
great Superman
12-game
if he was
winning
an
streak
actor.
in the first half of the season.
Yep.
He had 30 and a half scoreless innings in a row. So, I mean, that was the thing. He was the talk of the state at the first half of 91, I mean.
Because Tapani on the other end of the spectrum, he started 0-6.
What?
Tapani at the beginning of the season lost his first. No, I'm sorry. He lost all 6 starts in April. But his second half,
well, yeah, he was
just
great.
Went nuts. He went crazy.
And Erickson, Tapani, and Morris all finished in the top 7 of the Cy Young voting.
Right. Lost to Clemens, right?
Yeah. And then it's funny because Clemens won. The next 6 pitchers were all Twins or California Angels.
That's ridiculous.
And the Angels, it's funny. I look back, they sucked. They were like last place.
They were not that good. I don't remember.
But they had Mark Langston, they had Brian Hrbie, and they had Jim Abbott. And those guys were all great, and somehow the team was still just god awful.
Well, you need some run support behind him.
Yeah, that's true. but still, at this time, you got to have good stats as a pitcher to get votes.
Well,
so they obviously got a lot of wins because it was a different time.
Coming back to our staff, I've always thought that Kevin Tapani looked a lot like Jerry Seinfeld. Are you with me on that
Totally. I
one?
love that you said that.
Yes.
They're like identical. What's the deal with that?
Dude, they both got the butt chin. They both got, I don't know.
90-mile-an-hour fastballs. They both got.
Yeah.
One thing that stuck out to me right away, because for doing the podcast, besides, looking some stuff up, I also watched all the playoff games. So the first note that I have is we had a staff of sweet stashes.
Yeah, Jack.
You had
87 is even better though for that.
Right, but we're on 91 here, series. Pete. Let's
I know, but I'm
on
just
91. But you look at Gladden, Pagliarulo, Mack, Harper,
Shane Mack,
Morris, Chili, and don't forget about third base coach Gardy. I mean, those.
Did he have a stash and not a goatee at that time?
No, I think it was just a stash. I tried to look, but his hair was so light it was kind of hard to tell.
I bet he had a goatee, but he still had the facial hair.
Oh man. Well, I didn't count a couple guys if they had a goat, but Gardy's facial hair was so light it was hard to tell if it was just a stash, but it looked like a stash.
Before we get into the regular season, I got a question for you. So we talked about all these moves they made. They all worked out in the end. But especially you, Pete, since you picked this. Did you have high hopes for this season? Were you excited going into the season that this was going to actually be much of anything?
No, I don't recall having any high hopes for the season at all. And nobody did.
I like Chili Davis, but I thought Jack Morris was just a wasted signing. I thought, no way is that going to work.
I do want to, before we leave the mustache conversation, the video that I watched, it was called, it's a video called Simply the Best.
Yeah, that's
and
what
it's
we
narrated
watched
by Ted Robinson. At the beginning of it, Jack Morris does not have a mustache during spring training. And then he starts growing it during that. And
I saw that. He looks so weird without it.
He does, yes. But obviously he has the great mustache in Game 7. And it pays off for him. So anyway, go on, Brad. I had to make that comment.
I'm sorry. I should have let you get that in. I didn't know you had that.
Don't leave the mustache conversation.
Well, I don't think a lot of people had confidence. I mean, you finished last, but one of the other things that I found or heard actually during the first game of the World Series was Pat O'Brien mentioned that if you went to
Hi, I'm Pat O'Brien.
Oh, that's good.
Oh, we got him on. I didn't think he was going to call in.
Special guest.
So he said that if you went to Vegas before the season, put a $200 bet down that the Braves and the Twins would make the World Series, that bet would net you $1 million.
Wow.
Jesus.
So nobody thought.
Well, no. But, a big fan like us, we could have looked at all these moves and thought, oh, yeah, it's all going to be great. But I didn't think that at all. And then, so I bet.
If you bet on the Twins because you're a fan, you wouldn't pick the Braves that they're going to play against, right?
Well, right.
No.
Anyway,
That's
But
the thing.
I'm just saying the odds against
That's
even
the
the Twins
gotcha.
making were not real high.
So obviously, I bet you remember too. How did they start the year?
shitty.
Yeah,
2-9. They lost
started
7 in a row.
bad. Yeah.
Yeah.
2-9 and looked terrible. And I remember that stretch. I went to school one day and we're all talking and we're like, this team is just terrible. We were already done with them.
These guys are shitty.
So they did get to 500 eventually, and they just kind of hung around there until June 1st.
Yep.
And they were 23-25 on June 1st. What happens?
Well, let me say this.
15-game win streak.
I do have a specific memory that I want to share with my father on that one because we were watching the Twins game together. And
Like on June 1st, or like you talking about a certain time?
I think it was June 1st. It was like right at the beginning of it.
Okay.
Because that's where I'm kind of going with it. Kent Hrbie argues with the umpire and gets ejected from the game. And I was like, what is he doing? I mean, Hrbie, it wasn't even that bad of a call as I remember it. Again, this was almost how many years ago? Like 30 years ago. But then my dad said, a lot of times you see a player or a manager, a respected player or manager will do that just to put inspiration into his team and get his team fired up. That night is either that night or the next night they won, and that was the first game of the 15-game winning streak, and they went on to win the World Series. And my dad's like, see, I told you.
That guy, man, that Merv.
Merv knew all the
So
moves.
when that streak started, they were in 5th place still. And
Yep.
it ended and they actually moved into 1st
Yep.
on the 15th win. And then it ended the next day only on a walk-off blown save by Aguilera, which he never did.
Yep.
And then they won 4 more in a row. They were that close to 20 in a row.
Here's a little trivia here. What major movie is that moment depicted in? Where Randy
Moneyball.
Milligan Nope.
Oh,
where-
no, you're right. Sorry.
It's Randy Milligan of the Baltimore Orioles gets the game-winning hit with Hrbie racing to get the ball, and he cannot get there, and it wins the game for the Orioles. But what movie, well-known movie, is that depicted in? That moment.
I have no idea.
No clue.
I think you've actually mentioned this before, and when you say it, I'll remember. But
Angels in the outfield? I have no idea.
Well,
It's not even a
big
base-
enough. I was going to
it's
say
not a
Little Big
baseball
League,
movie.
but he
It's
said
not a baseball
well-known.
movie at all. But the main character is watching a baseball game, and that's the moment. And it's the Minnesota Twins broadcast because it's Ted Robinson's voice that that you hear if you're watching this movie really closely.
Well, I think everybody at home has had time to think about it, so we
Okay.
don't know.
No idea.
It is Tom Cruise and Jack Nicholson in A Few Good Men.
Oh, I know you've told me that before.
There's 2 moments actually where Tom Cruise is watching baseball in his apartment.
Yep,
One I think is a Blue Jays game, and the other one is this one, and it's this moment that he's watching, and he's holding. I think he's holding a baseball bat while he's watching and talking on the phone.
Wow. I couldn't handle the truth on that. That's crazy.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so Kirby Puckett is in that movie with Kevin
Awesome.
Bacon. So there you go. If you're playing a Kevin Bacon game,
6 degrees of separation. Perfect.
2 notes I had about that streak. I was looking at the baseball reference page, and almost every game they won, maybe one game wasn't, they were won by the starting pitcher. So that's how great. First of all, the starters went longer back then. But
yeah,
the
Right.
starting pitching in that first half at this point was because it was Erickson and Morris were winning every game, and Tapani was starting to come around. They were just lights out all the way through.
And then says something about the offense too, by the way. That says something about how well the offense is getting to the starting pitching of the the other team.
After they took first on that 15th win, they were tied for first on July 3rd. But other than that, they never gave up first place the rest of the year from that moment on. Yep. They never fell out of first. They were tied once. So that's pretty awesome.
Yes, it is.
Yes.
Great regular season. And if you win your division, what do you get to do after that?
Well, I got a few more notes on the regular season.
Oh, you got
here.
more than that. Holy cow.
Well,
All right.
yeah.
Hit it.
Do you have any other things on the regular season, Pete, before I rattle off more?
Well, getting back to that video, simply the best. There's a lot in here. I don't know if it's just me, Brad. Do you think of this being a big REM fan? Do you ever think that Andy McPhail and Mike Mills are the same person?
I never have, but now that you say it,
I could see
what you're
that.
referring to.
Yeah. The general manager.
So we have
Anyway.
Mike Mills, we have Christopher Reeve, and we have Jerry Seinfeld. This is quite a team.
Wow, that is a good team, actually. I want to see that team play.
And some kick-ass mustaches.
Right.
Yes. Yep.
All
right, go on.
Well, one note about the season, the site I was looking at broke down our record against every team.
Yeah.
And actually, I'll save that one because it ties into the ALCS. So do you remember that when they clinched the division, Pete? Because I remember 87.
That one
really
I don't
well. They
remember as
clinched in
much as
Texas,
87.
And I can remember the
remember.
play that won the game, a double play line out. But I don't really remember this. I think it was in Toronto. But I don't really have a memory of that.
That's weird. I have very little recollection.
And actually, I
winning
think
the
part of it,
division.
though, I think this year they lost, and they clinched on somebody else's loss like overnight.
They
backed
did.
into
They
it.
were on their way back from Toronto.
So
and
it didn't have
and
that moment
yeah.
that you're
on the field. Okay.
Chicago had lost, and when they got basically off the plane back from Toronto, they had won.
And that just ties into I could tell you about so many games from 1987, like specific games. I can't really remember hardly any at all from 91 until the playoffs, like specific games.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But I can tell you, Chili Davis had 19 home runs at the All-Star break, and he just took the league by storm. But he only ended up with 29. He had a great year, but he really slowed down on the power in the second half.
That's the dog
Still
days.
It's not terrible to hit.
No, but you know, we went on that streak without a 30 home run hitter until Justin Morneau for like 25 years.
Yeah.
We had these guys like Chili that
he
hit
came one
29 and never hit 30. It was just kind of that thing.
Right.
Did you know that Scott Erickson and Chili Davis, two of these new young guys, were roommates and owned a house together or rented a house together?
No, I did not know that.
Yeah, that's really cool. And there was one of those videos they show them like hanging out together and stuff. It looked like they had a real bromance.
Chili Davis? Was he that young at that point though?
Well, no, but he would have been older.
He had been with the Angels for a while, right?
He was
Right, but he was a new guy, and he probably just needed a place to stay. And
Okay.
they hit it off.
I thought you were saying like
and they were single. I mean, these were two bachelor guys.
Yep.
You know. So Shane Mack. Let's talk about Shane Mack some more. So I mentioned, I already said this, how he had a bad first half. Okay, I'll skip over that. You've talked about Erickson's starts being the day of death. Oh, here, Chuck Knobloch. So he won the Rookie of the Year. He had 2 events late in the year. So he had a really good year, but he had no power. How many home runs did he hit?
2.
1.
6.
Oh,
was it just one?
He hit 1 home run on August 31st, and it was like a huge deal because we didn't see that game, but I remember being with you, Pete, and we're like, oh, Chuck Knobloch, get a home run finally. And then he had a 20-game hitting streak in September, and that's what like sealed it that he was the Rookie of the Year. 20-game hitting streak to put it away. I already mentioned that they had 3
Not a bad glove either, by the way.
Right. Great defender.
Right. Great defender.
I mentioned that they had 3 of the guys in the Cy Young, too. So that's all my notes. But the other thing I was going to say, they showed their records against the other teams.
Mm-hmm.
One thing that shows what a different time period this was, they went 10-2 against the Yankees that year. Like, we just dominated the Yankees.
Well, didn't they dominate the Red Sox, too?
I think so, yeah.
Oh, they were always good against the Red Sox.
And
but they did not
only...
dominate the Toronto Blue Jays. They were 4-8 against the Toronto Blue Jays.
I remember being certain they were not going to beat the Blue Jays.
That's why I saved that, because who did we play in the playoffs? The Toronto Blue Jays.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. So here we go. What their final record was 95-67, right?
Yes, that's what I had.
And they comfortably won the division. The Blue Jays, I thought they were actually better. They were only 91-71, so we actually had a better record than them.
Yep.
But
the Blue Jays were favored to win the series because we were 4-8 against the Blue Jays in the regular season.
I was scared. All right.
But we had hadn't we just swept the Blue Jays at the end of the year?
No,
in
actually,
Toronto?
I wrote this down. We had lost 2 out of 3 in our
Oh, is
last.
that what it was?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
So yeah, we didn't go into the playoffs, even though it was a great team and a great record, with the most confidence. In
Right.
'87, I think we went in feeling really good, even though we were huge underdogs. But we were so young, and they were so good at home that we were so naive. We're like, oh, Twins are going to win.
First
Right.
time we had experienced anything like this
Right.
before.
But now
Yeah.
we're hardened and older, and we've had a little damage.
We're grizzled.
4 years later. Well,
All right,
and
you got
you
tons
look
of
at-
notes here.
if you look at it, I mean, obviously the Blue Jays are right there. I mean, they come back to win the World Series in '92 and '93. So
Yeah,
I mean,
right.
This team
With Jack Morris. And
yeah. But if you look at Morris the next
Well,
year, he
Not
had
only the
20
Blue Jays, but the Braves too are back for
Right.
the next like
for
15
the
years.
next. Yep. But if you look at Morris the next year, he had 21 wins,
Yeah, he was
but
not
his
good, though.
ERA was 4.04, and he got shelled in the playoffs.
Yeah.
He didn't win. I think he had. I think the only games that that the Blue Jays lost in the World Series because they won in 6. Jack Morris pitched. So
Oh,
he
the
didn't-
one other
he didn't
thing,
look
speaking
real
of
good
pitchers,
next year.
so we talked about the day of death and Erickson being, he was 12-3 at the All-Star break, 12-game winning streak, was supposed to start the All-Star game, but he got hurt.
Mm-hmm.
And he was never the same pitcher. He did win 20 games and finish second in the Cy Young voting, but every start he had in the postseason was like just full of worry and like, how long is he going to go and can he hold it together? Because he just was not the same pitcher anymore.
Right.
And he came through more often than not, but it was always like you were on the edge of your seat.
even
Right.
after that, I mean, in his career, he never really
Oh, yeah.
regained.
He never had another
completely.
year like that.
And then he
No.
went to Baltimore.
hmm
Wasn't
I mean,
that
his
great
record
either.
wasn't that great in '92, but he did have a pretty good year. But no, he was never, because before he got hurt, he was like shut down, like the best pitcher in baseball, and he lost that. So kind of sad.
Mhm.
Giff, you want to take us through these games since you have copious notes?
Well, I don't have copious notes on the ALCS.
Oh, okay.
I kind of. Well, the one guy I forgot on our stash crew was Carl Willis.
Oh yeah, big train.
Yeah, needed to have Carl Willis in there as
That's
well.
that's a big one.
Did you mention also Dan Gladden, who made the game-winning catch against the Blue Jays? I mean, that's a mustache guy too. But
Oh yeah, Gladden was first on the list.
Yeah,
okay, maybe you did
Yeah,
mention him. Okay,
Yep.
anyway, just to
So-
recap that one memory of him, he made the catch that sent us to the World Series. It was a routine fly ball.
Yep.
But
Yep. So
God, it's just one of those images.
game 1, we had Tom Candiotti, the crafty knuckleballer, throwing.
And that
against,
was a
Jack
controversial call by Cito
Yes.
Gaston, and it blew up in his face.
It sure did. Yeah, it didn't go so hot for him. I mean, I don't have a whole lot on each of these games. I've just got just a few notes for the ALCS. The World Series, I've got quite a bit more. One thing I did have was the video I watched on YouTube. Was like, a VCR tape, as Pete likes to put it, that was just uploaded. So one of the early mentions in this game was we got an update on Bo Jackson's hip injury.
Oh, really?
So that was going on during the playoffs. They were just saying that it doesn't look like he's ever going to play football again, and I was like, oh, I didn't realize that was going on during this time. But yeah, that I didn't have a whole lot on game 1.
Yeah, they won 5-4. The only note I had down is that Shane Mack had a really big game. So
Right, and Shane Mack was good in the ALCS.
yes,
We
we'll
get to the
say
World Series.
yeah. Just wait. But he was great in the ALCS.
Yeah, he was.
Game 2, then I do have specific memories of this game.
Okay.
So we had school, and it was an afternoon game, and I don't know if we even saw any of it or if I got home for like late of it. But Juan Guzman, I think he was a rookie, and he was kind of like Scott Erickson for them. He was a hot hand, and he shut us down, and we lost 5-2. It would have set the record for most consecutive postseason wins at home, but we lost.
Yep. Tapani actually started that game.
And so I was feeling really bad about the series after that because we lost a home game, which we had never done in my lifetime. And that guy shut us down, and he was a great pitcher. So,
right. Yeah, the two things I have for this game is Juan Guzman. I mean, he's built like a brick shithouse. I mean, that guy, his shoulders, his arms, his legs. I mean, he is just a massive human being up on the mound throwing the ball. The other thing
I remember
had,
him. He seemed like a twin killer. I remember him just always dominating against us.
The other thing I had on the other end of the physical spectrum is Mullinix for Toronto.
Rance?
He looks
yes.
like a middle school science teacher up there, doesn't he? He looks like this frail little thing.
Yeah,
with
I
his
can see
glasses.
that.
Oh my God!
Actually, who's that one cartoon with the big mustache and glasses? I think he's a teacher. I can't think of who it is, but he looked. I can picture a guy that he looks like.
Yeah, just kind of an odd looking fellow. And he was their DH, I think, in the first couple games, wasn't he?
That sounds about right.
But he's just this frail little thing.
And his name is Rance.
Yes, that is correct.
All right, so everything changed in Game 3. Remember this game?
I do, since I watched it recently.
Pete?
Was this the Palirulo game?
Yeah.
Okay.
Speaking of watching these, I had not. So I have all the World Series games on my own VHSs that I recorded myself, and I put them onto DVDs a few years ago, and I still have those. So I've watched those 100 times.
Do you have all the commercials?
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, no, because most of the games I was watching sitting there live, and I paused them out. You
did?
Yeah,
sure.
I did.
Okay.
And I remember most of the 87 playoff games too really well, but I did not remember the series well. And so when the pandemic hit 2 years ago, I found all these games on YouTube, and I went through this whole huge thing where I rewatched every Twins playoff game like ever over again. And it was fun to watch this series. So Game 3, we won 3-2 in 10 innings. It was a Friday night game. It was way intense.
We had a football game that night. I remember.
Yeah, I remember that. I didn't go. I was watching it, but I heard like you guys were on the bus and you were like listening to it or something. And
well, we got home because this was my first year on the football team. I obviously didn't play, but me and Haken got off the bus. I remember we got home from wherever it was that we were playing. Got off the bus, ran to his house, and watched the end
right
of the
by
game
the school,
which was right across the street from where the bus dropped us off. And we saw the very end. We saw like the last half inning.
Yeah.
And it was amazing.
So the Blue Jays scored 2 runs in the first inning of that game, and they didn't score again. And so Tapani got better, or no? Game 3 was Erickson.
It was Erickson in the
but
first
I don't think he went that long. But
no, I've got some stats here on him.
I was just going to say our bullpen took this series over in Toronto, and this was where that started. Palirulo hit a home run in the 10th inning to win it. So go ahead.
Well, and Erickson, this is the way Erickson started the game. First inning, home run, walk, and a booming double. He had 31 pitches, 3 runs, 2 runs, 3 hits, 76 pitches through the third inning.
See, every start was just an adventure, you thought.
Yeah. So
this might have been the worst one. But how far did he go?
He got pulled in the 4th after 84 pitches.
Yeah, okay. So the bullpen pitched like 6 innings, didn't give up a single run.
Right.
We fought back, and then this unlikely hero. And I remember that home run. My God, that was exciting. Because it's like 10:30 on a Friday night. There's no school the next day, so you're up just loving what's going on there.
Was this the game where Carter got hurt?
I don't remember.
Or was that game 4?
I don't remember Joe Carter.
I remember which game it was because I got in my notes game 3 and then I skipped right to game 5, so I must have forgot to write down. But one of the turning points in this series was when Joe Carter went back to catch a fly ball up against the wall.
Oh, I do remember that.
And he sprained his ankle on that play, and he was a shell of himself at the plate the rest of the series.
Yeah, but he still played, though, right? Yeah.
He still played. Yep.
I remember that.
They put him at because the rest of those games were in. Yeah, so they put him at DH. So Rance Mullinix got sat down for Joe Carter at DH.
And it wouldn't have mattered much because game 4, we won 9-3. Puckett hit a home run and we just coasted to win in that one. You got any notes on that game?
Well, no. Well, the only other note I have between on my 3 and 5 notes, Paul Sorrento made his first appearance.
Oh, yeah. He was going to be the next Ken Hrbie.
So my question was
how did that work out?
Sorrento
It didn't.
based on him? Paul Sorrento, Pedro Serrano.
They were nothing alike. Absolutely.
They were both
Pedro
huge.
Serrano was 2 years before Paul Sorrento, so
right.
Paul Sorrento was based on Pedro Serrano.
Maybe that's what it was. He modeled his career because they were both huge human beings that could hit a fastball but couldn't hit curveball very well.
He just didn't pay off, and he had a huge at bat in the World Series where he could have been a hero, and it didn't happen.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, so then game 5, back in Toronto. I remember this game because it was on a Sunday. The Vikings played that day at noon, and they were in the midst of a terrible season. I don't know who they played, but there were all these previews for the Twins because they played at like 3:00.
Right.
And Puckett hit another home run. The Jays, though, had a 5-2 lead in that game.
Yep.
And we scored 3 in the 6th, and then we scored 3 more in the 8th to win going away. And it was exciting.
Cito Gaston got booted in that game as well.
Oh, yeah.
And the Twins became the first team to win 3 road games in a league championship series.
That's
First
amazing
ever?
because we have I remember that. It's amazing because we have such a home reputation and a terrible road reputation, but they won this by sweeping the road series.
So Puckett won the MVP. He batted .429 in the series with 2 homers and 6 RBIs. .429, and Mack batted .333.
There you go.
Not too shabby.
He got them all out of the way in the first series.
Hey, he came through in game 6 and 7 when it really mattered.
He did. So you were talking about pitching. So in this ALCS, our starting pitchers had an ERA of 5.53 and an opponent's batting average of .316.
They were not good.
Now listen to the relievers.
Yeah, baby.
The relievers had an ERA of 0.0 and a opponent batting average of 119 and 18 in the third inning.
They didn't give up a single
They
run?
did not give up a run the
Wow.
entire series.
I mean, I knew that they were great, but that is awesome. And David West, who, he was like the big guy in the Frank Viola trade 2 years before, just never really panned out. But in this series, this was his shining moment. He was awesome.
I'd forgotten about David West.
Actually, no, David West wasn't all that odd. Oh, wait, that was in the World Series. Never mind.
Well, yeah, he must not have given up any runs.
That's true, yes. But I've got a heck of a stat on him for the World Series.
Oh, okay. Well, any other memories of the ALCS then before we move on?
No, that's pretty much all I had. I only had about a half a page of notes on the ALCS. The World Series is a little bit different story, so buckle up, folks.
And most of my notes are right here in my head, but I did write down a lot of stuff.
So, Pete, you want to kick us off Game 1, October 19th, 1991?
Oh, my God. This whole World Series, I mean, it was against the Braves.
Just thinking about it.
This was back when I was happy that the Braves. I came to hate the Braves later, but I liked the Braves at this time because they were an underdog team. Also, like the Twins, just fun to watch. But
I liked Barry Bonds and the Pirates at the time, and they just played an epic NLCS, and I wanted the Pirates to win, and so I did not like the Braves because of that.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I was
kind of with Pete on this because I liked the worst to first storyline for both teams.
So it gave it a good angle.
Yeah. And just you had to respect the Braves pitching. Both teams pitched really well the whole series. As far as the Game 1 itself, I didn't have a lot of notes on it, but if you want to kick us off, Gifford, on the notes.
Well, actually, I don't know if Gifford will have this down. Pete, I think you'll remember this. So the guy that threw out the first pitch, he got in a terrible injury when we were in Dallas that we mentioned earlier 2 weeks ago or last week.
You were there the same time?
Yeah.
Are you suspects?
Do you remember that, Pete? Steve Palermo, the umpire, got shot trying to break up a robbery.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah, I knew you would. And he came back and on like a crutch or so. He threw out the first pitch and kind of returned to the game that night because that was such a great story. He tried to break up a robbery and got shot and survived. And
that didn't happen in Dallas. We were in Dallas
Right.
when we heard about it, to be clear to our listeners. So,
Well,
okay.
No, he was shot in Dallas.
Yeah, I thought he was.
He was shot at the same time that we were in Dallas?
I think so, because I believe
Welcome
we
to the
heard about it.
conversation.
That's why it really stood out to us. We were like on the bus going home, we're getting ready to know, and like this happened right there. And so it was like a really big deal.
Oh, I don't remember it being right there. Okay. I thought it was in like New York or something.
Yeah. So for this game,
Okay.
compared to the rest of the series, pretty much a ho-hum game, but Greg Gagne hit a home run, and that basically won it. And Greg Gagne, that was awesome because what a great twin. And this is a guy who didn't have great stats really ever during the regular season, but this dude came up big time in the playoffs. More than once.
He hit. That's his second World Series home run because he hit one in '87 too.
Well, he hit one against the Tigers that year too. That was even
the
biggest one.
So that home run that he hit was his fourth postseason home run, and it set a Twins franchise record at the time.
Look at you.
Wow.
See you.
Yep. So
And
that
do you remember who he hit that home run off of? Because that comes back again later.
Was it Tom Glavine? John Smoltz?
No.
Tom Glavine?
No, it was late in the game.
Their first game starter wasn't
Was it
one
Charlie
of the best. It was
Liebrand?
Charlie Liebrand, and he held his head in shame after he hit it, and you can then see him again later in the series. Poor guy.
Oh, it was in the fifth inning.
Oh my God, that guy just
that was not good for him.
I mean, if the Braves are going to blame anybody, they probably start with Charlie Liebrand just because he lost game one, and then of course what happened later. Which was, I mean, he had, I don't know. You could blame Bobby Cox, I suppose, too.
Well, and in that game, the Twins were up 5-1 in the eighth, but they got a big double play in the eighth to kind of stop a Braves rally that was happening at the time. So Atlanta scored a run to make it 5-2 in the eighth, but that double play just shut the whole thing down, and then it was just easy peasy after that.
So it's a great win.
Even though you say it's a snoozer, by comparison, it is to the other games.
I just said, it was ho-hum by comparison.
By comparison, yeah, exactly. Because that was the only Twins win that wasn't a one-run victory.
The World Series back then, they've changed this too. Always started on Saturday night. And so again, I remember the next day watching like some crappy Vikings game, and all day they're just showing previews of Greg Gagne hitting that home run over and over and over again to preview the game 2 Sunday night.
Sure.
And game 2 was a great one. Again, though, as far as like great finishes, this is low on the list, but this is a fantastic game.
Right.
By itself.
Absolutely.
So, my best memory of this game, first inning, Chili Davis, right-handed, just hit a bomb. And I could watch that replay for the rest of my life every day. It is like the sweetest looking just bomb of a home run. It gave us a 2-0 lead. And like that Jays game where they scored 2 runs and then never scored again, we didn't score again until the 8th inning. Tom Glavine was pitching, and he was on.
Well, and you got to remember that's a 2-run home run because David Justice doesn't catch Dan Gladden's leadoff hit.
Yeah, it was kind of lucky.
Him and the second baseman, was it Lemke playing second at that time?
Yeah, they collided and.
Yep. So that's the way game 2 started, was with an error on a routine fly ball, and so Gladden's on second base when Chili Davis comes up to rip that 2-out home run for, to get that lead. So I mean, that should have been a 1-run homer. Instead, it factors into the final score.
Now, was this a game where there was the famous collision between Dan Gladden and Greg Olson at home plate?
Yes, I believe so.
Now, Greg Olson, being from where? Where did
Minnesota.
He grow up? Marshall, Minnesota.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Marshall, Minnesota.
That's right. Just a hop, skip, and a jump from where we grew up at Russell Tyler Ruthven. 20-minute drive for us and about a 10-minute drive for Gifford, probably. But but he was the catcher for the Braves. And there was the world famous picture where Gladden collided with him, and Gladden is just like, he's on one knee at home plate just watching.
Yeah.
And Olsen is totally flipped over on his head.
On his head.
Yes, just on his head, and not with hands or anything, just totally on his head is the photo. But
and it looked like Gladden had been sitting there for like, a minute.
Right.
That's exactly
He's
right.
doing a
Just watching him.
handstand.
And but Olsen held on to the ball, and so Gladden was out on the play.
That was one of those
Was that
pictures in
game?
Sports Illustrated that I cut out, and everybody saw that one.
And was this also the
I
game
think that
where
might have been
Hrbie
the game 3.
where the pulled the foot where
Yep.
Hrbie
Oh,
pulled the
yeah.
guy's foot out?
Yeah. So
So-
this is the Gant play at first base.
Ron Braves will forever
Ron Gant
curse
fell
this
off
game.
first base.
Right.
I loved
Completely on
it,
his
and
own.
I watched another video where they actually talked to that ump like afterwards,
Mhm.
and he still maintained that, and he explained why. He didn't say like, "Well, when I feel bad" or whatever. He said, if you look at that and look at his momentum, he fell off, and Hrbie just kept the tag on him. That looked bad, and if you're a Braves fan, of course, you're going to say that. But, I mean, it wasn't as cut and dried as you'd say, and, of course, you're biased. But even the ump, looking again at it, confirmed. He said that's really the right call.
So I got just a few things to say about this play. So, first of all, throughout this series, Buck and McCarver, the announcers,
Oh, Tim McCarver.
you can tell that I think they had money on the Braves because they are definitely cheering for the Braves. I don't know if it's because they're both St. Louis
Gifford, you are a
guys.
true Minnesota sports fan.
I don't know if they're St. Louis because it's St. Louis guys and they're cheering for the NL. But here's the thing.
I don't think it's
So
true.
Buck and McCarver both thought he was pulled off. Tommy Lasorda thought he was pulled off as well. So nobody points out that Gant could have just slid feet first into the bag. It wouldn't have been a big deal. He would have been safe, no problem. But it's not up to Hrbie to stop his momentum going into foul territory.
Yeah.
If you watch the play, Gant comes in with his front foot on the bag. His momentum takes his front foot off. He puts his back foot on, and he's still falling into foul territory.
Well, and that's what the umpire said. Look at it. He put his right foot on the bag, but then his left foot comes over Hrbie. Like he has to lift it all the way up over him. And when he does that, his momentum takes him too far.
And I think it is helped out by Hrbie's weight, but I don't. He's pulling him off, but it's not like he deliberately just grabbed his foot and pulled it off or anything. I don't think. But
if
these guys,
we have any listeners in Atlanta, we've lost them all now. But oh well.
So these guys keep going back.
Sorry,
to
Mike
play.
Mills, who is Mike Mills is a big Braves fan.
Yeah, right.
They come back to that play inning after inning, calling it a key play in the game. So, because there would have been runners on the corners with 2 outs. So that means Davis Justice would have been coming up next. In the beginning of the next inning, Davis Justice comes up.
His name is David.
David.
He comes up. What did I say?
David Justed.
You called him Davis twice, so
Dave Justice comes up, hits a weak fly ball out to Gladden. Okay. So later in this same game, they've got runners at the corners with 1 out, with Gant and Justice coming up next. Okay. Gant hits a weak grounder up the first baseline. Hrbie runs up, grabs it, tags him. What does David Justice come up to do in the exact same situation he would have been in the inning early in the game? He hits the same weak fly ball out to Gladden for an easy out. So these guys are talking about how this is a key play. Like the Twins somehow robbed them of a run because they obviously would have scored a run with runners on the corners with 2 outs. Well, first off, you can't say that because they had runners on the corners with 1 out and didn't do anything later in the game with the same batter at the plate. So come on, like that's not a key play. McCarver acts like it's just the biggest thing in the world, but you're not guaranteed any.
Well, of course,
any
no
runs.
Guarantee.
Right,
It's still a big play, but
earlier in the same game, I think it was Gladden tried to steal second, and the ball was thrown. The ball beats him there, but the tag wasn't applied. And on replay, McCarver goes, "Oh yeah, he was probably safe, but the ball beat him there, so that's why they called him out." So they brushed that off like it's no big deal. But when the Twins do something, it's a theme that runs throughout this series where they, the Braves just couldn't catch a break, or the Twins got lucky there, or it was like, come on, guys, are you serious?
I think that's overstating it, but that's fine.
That's kind of, well, I've got another example.
My memory of Tim McCarver is not that he hated the Twins. It's just that the guy constantly used lame puns. And that was his whole announcing style. It was just over and over. He would try to come up with something witty that was lame, and he wouldn't stop doing it.
Sure.
And I know that because I have those games on tape, so I actually watch those games and actually listen to the announcing.
So one other thing I
go back to 87, but I think that we got luckier on some plays with umpires in 87 than we did.
There was a big one in Game 7.
Yes, there was a couple of big ones in Game 7. We got robbed on a run scoring one.
Well, that's true. Randy Bush was literally safe on a run that they took away.
And there was a rundown. I think Tommy Herr was on the base, right? It was Hrbie and Gagne and Tommy Herr that totally missed a tag, and there was interference.
Yeah.
But anyway, go on.
So
when I watched this game,
I'd like to point out that at that point in the series, Justice was 1 for 8 with runners in scoring position, so he wasn't getting anybody in.
Too bad, Davis.
Yeah.
My biggest memory or realization watching this game over 2 years ago is that this is 2-2, and it is tight. And Tapney's throwing, I don't know, 100 pitches. He comes back out for the 8th inning. Can you imagine Rocco Baldelli, who took out our best pitcher after 5 innings, or any manager in 2022? Right. He's in the 8th inning. He got the win in that game, and he just, after that 2-0 lead, he just kept him in it the whole time. And then bottom of the 8th, out of nowhere, Scott Leyes gets just enough of the ball, just clears the plexiglass.
First pitch in the 8th inning.
Crowning moment of his whole career.
Right. So this game featured 3 pitchers. That was it. Tapney went 8.
Glavine probably never even got replaced, right?
Glavine never got replaced, and Aguilera came in to close out the ninth. So there was only 3 pitchers used in this entire game.
Different time.
In the top of the 8th inning was when the Braves had the runners on the corners with 1 out and failed to get anybody home. So Glavine comes out, you could tell he's disgusted. First pitch he throws, Leyes puts it in the seats. And
was
then
it the first pitch of the inning?
It was the very first pitch of the inning.
Yeah, I remember that. No.
And then later we got another guy on first, and he was called for a balk on a pickoff move that moved a guy to second. So I mean, you could tell he was just so fed up with his team, because in the he lost that game, and in the NLCS he lost 2 games in the NLCS. So before he got his first win in this series, he had pitched 3 games and gotten 4 runs of support in 3 games. So I mean, he's just got to be fed up with his team not giving him anything.
So we got this 2-0 lead. Everybody's feeling good. Or were you still talking about that game, Pete?
I was just going to say, so now we go to Atlanta.
And this game is nuts. You can talk about 6 and 7. This is the greatest baseball game I've ever watched where my team didn't win. Game 3, it's amazing. Even though they lost, this is one I can watch over and over because of the moves that were made, and it just, God, it was great.
Yep.
And I read somewhere, this World Series has been rated the greatest by several people. This game has been called one of the greatest World Series games ever played. And I'm sure that also includes game 6 and 7.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So we fell behind 4-1 going into the 7th inning. So, I mean, it wasn't anything special there for a while. And this was Smoltz. No, this must have been, it was Scott Erickson again.
Yep, and Scott Erickson.
Was it Steve Avery or was it?
Avery was the starter in this one as well.
So Steve Avery had been just lights out in the playoffs. Like, he had a huge scoreless streak going into this game, and they thought he was going to kill it. And we scored a run in the first inning.
And do you know why we scored that run in the first inning?
There was an error on Mark Lemke, I think, right?
No, it was an error on David Justice again to start the game on Gladden. Gladden hit the ball, leadoff hitter, hit the ball out there. He misplays it. It's an error again. He ends up with a triple.
And Knobloch got him in.
And that's how Gladden came in to score the first run of the game. So
But-
Justice not looking good to start.
And that
games
streak
2 and
would have
3.
continued for Steve Avery without that error because he retired the next 15 guys in a
15,
row. Like
yeah.
we just did nothing.
Right. Well,
Finally,
and the game before, Glavin retired 15 in a row as well.
yeah, they're good.
I mean, they're just amazing pitchers, unbelievable pitchers.
Finally, in the 7th inning, Hrbie Puckett, who did not have a very good series until later, hit a home run, made it 4-2. So it got a little life.
Yep.
And then this is where the game goes crazy. And this is my favorite moment in the series outside of the end. So in the 8th, they took out Avery. It was kind of controversial because there was like one guy on, but he was still cruising. And they brought in Alejandro Pena. He had been brought in from the Mets during the season, and I think was 15 for 15. Whatever it was, he was perfect in saves. Hadn't blown a save with the Braves. And Chili Davis doesn't get to play in this game because there's no DH.
Yep.
And we bring in Chili Davis to pinch hit, and I think it was the first pitch again. He hits a left-handed opposite field home run to tie the game, and that at-bat was just, oh, God, that was the greatest moment. Because they're like, oh, we're going to win this game. It's over. We're going to sweep these guys. But all it did is set up some of the greatest other innings to come, because then it was just tied for the next 4 innings, and just nothing happened. Do you remember this? So in the 12th, we had a chance to score with Gladden on third. And this was where Mark Lemke had an error. But Hrbie struck
it went off his foot. It went off his foot, yep.
Hrbie had his big chance because he's only got 1 out, but he struck out. So they walk Puckett to load the bases, knowing we were out of batters at this time. We had no bench players left and the pitcher position up. So they put Puckett on to load him up anyway. We pinch hit Rick Aguilera,
right?
Because he was the best.
That's
hit.
right.
He's in the bullpen warming up to come pitch, which he did pitch. Yep. And he comes in and he actually hit it well. He hit a fly ball straight away center field, but right at the guy. Yep. And just those moments of like, holy crap, Rick Aguilera's pitch hitting. We've got all these moves being made. And then this is where the legend of Mark Lemke was born, because we all remember him in this series. This is where it started.
Because they figured Aguilera, just backing up, Aguilera had National League experience as a hitting pitcher, being with the Mets all those years.
Right.
And Lemke started off the inning, he hit a double to score the game-winning run, barely. Another close play at the plate.
Yep. Great play at the plate. I mean, a great finish. I mean, this is the start.
And this is the 12th inning, if I didn't say that.
This is the start of the 4 games in this series that end on the last play at the plate. Like the last batter, it's, a hit ends the game.
And I believe at the time, this was the longest game in World Series history.
I think so.
I mean, it's like, it's a Tuesday night. We got to go to school the next day, and it's midnight. And this is just so crazy watching this stuff.
Well, and getting back to how great the pitching was and how exciting this game was, the Twins had first and third with 1 out in the 7th, 8th, and 12th innings and got no runs in. And in the 10th inning, they had first and second with 2 outs. So, I mean, there was action on the bases. You see a 0 on the scoreboard. It wasn't 1, 2, 3 innings and, boring stuff going on. I mean, there were runners on, there were walks, there were hits.
Sweaty palms every single inning.
Yep. There was all this stuff going on that was it was so amazing.
And it gets worse the next night. So the next night, speaking of pitching.
I got a few things still on this game.
Oh, sorry.
So in this game, I would like to go back to game 1 real quick when they're introducing the players. Pete, you mentioned that Olson was from Minnesota.
Marshall, Minnesota.
So all the other Braves are getting introduced, and there's light smattering of booze around in the stadium. When Olson gets introduced, the place perks up. I mean, people are cheering. It's not the whole stadium, but there was a heavy cheering section for Greg Olson, and it was funny because he comes out to get on the baseline with the rest of his starters, and he's like, "Whoa, is that for me?" Kind of said something to one of his teammates. So in the beginning of this game, Hrbie is introduced. And of course, game 2, he pulls Gant off the bag. and there's just booing like crazy. And Hrbie like is right
loves
off the
it.
baseline. He's
Yes,
raising
yes.
his hands. He's clapping for the crowd and like yelling, "Yeah, I love it," And the announcers.
And what did Hrbie want to be if not a baseball player? He was going to be, or when he was
A
done
wrestler.
with baseball, pro
Well,
wrestler,
wrestler.
baby, and he
Right.
played it up.
And I remember they did a little intro with Jesse Ventura before one of the games. It was on a national broadcast. and
No, it was
Ventura
Macho Man. It was Macho Man.
No, I'm pretty sure it was Jesse Ventura because Jesse Ventura was the Minnesota guy, and he was standing up for Hrbie on that because that was a great wrestling move, pulling him off the bag like that.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure that it was Jesse Ventura.
We'll agree to
Ventura
disagree.
makes a
'cause it
lot
was
more
Macho
sense.
Man. No, it was the Macho Man. I just watched this like a couple days ago.
Okay,
I can't
okay.
break this tie, so you can.
I could have swore
So-
it was Jesse Ventura.
Buck mentions that the Atlanta fans are having some good-natured fun with Hrbie because they were booing him. On the other side of it, Hrbie did receive a death threat, so that's
Yes,
fun.
he did.
That's a lot of fun. So good-natured.
If it happened today, he would have gotten 10,000 death threats.
Right, exactly. But so that was kind of one of the things I had for that. So game 4. Oh,
Game
one of the other
4.
things I wanted to mention, Kirby's home run in the 7th inning was his first hit of the series. After game 2, the Twins outfield had 0 hits in the first 2 games.
Really?
Yeah.
Oof.
Yeah,
They weren't
well,
doing a whole
so
lot.
we can just jump ahead here. Shane Mack started this series 0 for 15, and in
Mm-hmm.
these games, they were talking about benching him and letting Chili Davis play the outfield because he never
Well, he
played it
did.
anymore. Oh, they did, right? Once.
Yep.
It was bad. It was ugly, and it was very depressing to see him go through the slump at this time.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, the outfield, not very good.
Right.
All right. So game 4, you have this pitching matchup, Morris versus Smoltz, and Smoltz
Mhm.
grew up in Detroit, idolizing Jack Morris. So this was like a huge deal to him, and this was like this great pitching matchup we're going to see, which of course we see again later. So another great matchup, just like they've all been basically, except for Charlie Liebrandt.
Right. Poor
So
Charlie.
in this game, it's tied in the 5th. The Braves should have gone ahead, but Lonnie Smith, I'm not talking about game 7 here. Lonnie Smith, there was a deep fly ball that he should have gone like halfway, and
Yep.
Puckett couldn't get to it, and he went back and tagged up. He was on second base,
Yep.
and a ball all the way to the wall and off, and he did not score because he only made it to third. So Lonnie Smith, foreshadowing things to come, with a major error. Actually, no, he didn't stop at third. This is the play where he got thrown out at home and just bowled over Dan Gladden. There was another collision, and
You mean
Gladden.
Harper.
Harper.
Yep.
Harper held on.
It's the
and-
mustache.
But that also foreshadows the end of this game. Harper
Mhm.
again. So
Well, and here's the other thing. Again, me thinking that the guys are biased. So when
Mhm.
Gladden came in spikes up, that was dirty. But when Lonnie Smith completely blows up Harper, these guys were asking other people, have you ever seen a hit that hard? I mean, holy cow, he's like a linebacker coming in there. And they're like, but that's part of the game. That's baseball. That's fine. I'm like, seriously, he
Gifford,
took
it's the
his head
unwritten
off.
rules of baseball. None of
Oh
them
my
make any
God, yeah.
sense.
We're gonna get it. Yeah, I know.
Of course, they've
Rules.
changed all the collision rules now anyway, so that would never happen.
So
Right.
So directly after that play, Harper makes the second out of that inning at the plate on a wild pitch by Viola. It bounces.
Not Viola.
I'm sorry, Viola. Jesus. Well, you had Gladden playing catcher a minute ago. So.
Viola pitching to Dan Gladden.
Right. So it was a wild pitch, and Pendleton tried to score from third on the wild pitch, and Harper was able to retrieve the ball and come back and take him out.
Is that the one where he
plate.
like dove and hit it?
Yeah,
Oh,
he
what
dove.
a play.
Mhm.
Harper,
Yeah.
man.
Yeah.
Speaking of
So-
Dan Gladden,
Gotta
though,
love
out of
Harper.
position, in game 12, or game
12.
game 4 after the 12th inning, if that game was going to go any longer, Dan Gladden was going to be the pitcher. Tom Kelly
Right.
said, and he's going to put him out there and just see what happens.
He's done it
for as long-
before. He has pitched in.
He was
in
the one
games.
guy who did do that,
Right.
kind of, when he had to. But if that game had gone any longer, it would have been even more epic.
Well, and that's the
Yeah.
thing. The only three guys he had available were Aguilera, Tapani, and Jack, who was going to pitch the next day. So he's not putting him in there. So
Right.
those are the only three guys you got. And like Pete said, Aguilera at least had National League experience. So, why not put him out there?
So this game is tied 2-2 in the ninth. Great pitchers duel. And guess who comes up? Mark Lemke. And he triples with one out. But the Braves are running low on guys too already. They bring up this no-name. Was it his only at bat in the series, I bet? Jerry
He
freaking Willard.
Oh yeah.
Who?
Yes. Willard.
He's like the Tom Lawless of the Braves. Tom Lawless hit a home run against the Twins in 87.
He's a poor man's Tom Lawless.
Yeah.
Right.
So Jerry freaking Willard comes up to pinch hit, and he takes this mighty swing and hits this fly ball that off the bat you assume he crushed it because he celebrates like he had a home run. It's a weak fly ball to Shane Mack. He's coming in strong. Lemke's tagging up. Mack throws it on the money to the plate. Gladden catches the ball, actually connects with Lemke, but he hits him with the shoulder, not the glove. The ball beat him. The glove did not hit him, and so he scored. And it was the right call.
It was call.
It was like a 0.millisecond from throwing him out at the plate. And that's how they won that game. And it was just like, if you weren't tense enough, I remember after that moment, I was dead. It was.
I think you said Gladden again and meant Harper.
Oh my God, Harper.
It isn't the stash. I swear it's the stash. Right.
So,
and that was the right call because, I mean, he hit him with his elbow and forearm
it was
instead
totally,
of the glove.
But it was that close. I mean, it was a great throw. It was a great catch by Dan Gladden.
Dan Gladden's running all over the place. He's catching series.
He's that fast. He was known for his speed.
Yep. He's gritty.
So the other note I had on this one was in the seventh inning, Larkin came in as the pinch hitter for Morris, because his spot at bat was coming up.
Yeah.
And he grounded out immediately. So it's like, well, Morris could have done that, and you could have left Morris in the game because he had, So, but that's hindsight, obviously. But
that's baseball.
Holy cow! It's again unbelievable finish to another one-run game.
So now we're going to game 6.
Larkin sucks. We should have just left. We should have just kicked him off the team after that.
He's more of a game 7 guy.
He's not clutch at all.
Yeah, he only hit 500 in the series.
We're on to game 6 now, right?
Yeah.
We're gonna. I think you go from game 4 to game 6. That's
we forget about game 5.
So game 5, it was almost like you needed that breather. Not as a Twins fan, because now it's like, holy crap, we're down to our
We're
last.
not going to win this thing.
But we get blown out.
Shane Mack needed a breather because he sat down and Chili Davis starts for him.
14-5, the only game of the series. It was forgettable. It was terrible. But anyway,
you just think that's it. That's it. We're done.
Because it was
the one thing I'll say about this game is I hated them losing this game, but thank God Tom Glavine finally got run support. Like, this guy has been killing it all postseason, and the Braves finally chip in and give him run support.
Yeah, good for Tom Glavine.
Well, I mean,
good for him.
He's pitched unbelievably well.
That's enough game 5 talk.
Well, no, I got a couple things.
Why?
So in the 6th inning, the Twins were 1 for their last 24 with runners in scoring position in this game. Although Glavine in the 6th, he kind of blew up because he walked 4 and walked in 2 runs to give the Twins a little bit of.
He walked in 2 runs?
He walked in. He had 4 straight walks, walking in 2 runs. So that was one of the things that was a little out of whack. But this is where I have my David West stat of the night.
Oh, okay.
So David West, for the World Series, ended with an infinite ERA. He had faced 6 batters. He had 4 earned runs on 4 walks, 0 outs, 1 home run, and a single.
Okay, so it didn't carry over from the ALCS.
Infinite ERA for David West in 2 games.
So the problem is,
Yep.
not just did we get blown out and we're down 3-2, but you're coming home. That's good. But Scott Erickson is on the mound, and nobody trusts him. Like they don't know that he's going to blow, but nobody trusts him to go out and put together that shutdown performance. And he pitched he pitched into the 7th inning. But you watch the game, it was a roller coaster.
Shaky.
By far his best game. And who else showed up in this game in the first inning?
Shane Mack.
That's right, baby. First hit before that, though. Series.
Knobloch singles. And you know who else was having a sucky series, though? Hrbie Puckett.
Well, Kent Hrbie. Good Lord.
Well, yeah. They all were. You just
him and Larkin. Puckett, Larkin.
So Mack was the worst, but they were all just dead here. But Puckett triple. So first of all, we had all the story, the lore that he told the guys to get on my back,
get on the bus.
So his first at bat in the first inning, he pulls a triple down the left field line, scores Knobloch. There you go. That's Hrbie. Shane Mack breaks his bat, singles him in. He's off to Schneid. He got another double later, and I just breathed so deep after all that. I'm like, this is so good.
Well, so this is the Twins.
So we're up 2-0 right away.
The Twins get 3 singles, a triple, and a sac fly in the first inning against Avery.
Oh, yeah, it was Steve Avery, too. That's the thing. It was not just Erickson, but it was Avery.
Right. So do we want to talk about a particular fielding play that happened in the third?
Yeah, because Erickson was a ticking time bomb.
Right.
He gave up. David Justice hit a ball off the right field facing. That was one of the hardest hit balls I'd ever seen, and it was fouled by like 3 feet.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, Ron Gant smokes 1-2, Giff.
Yep. And what happened on that play,
Pete?
Well, I think that was one of the most legendary catch in Minnesota Twins, if not Major League Baseball history. This was back in the day when the Metrodome had the plexiglass, and it would have been even more amazing if they didn't have the plexiglass, because he would have caught that ball either way, and it would have been a home run. Mm-hmm. But it was it would have been off the plexiglass. But Hrbie Puckett, who was 5'8", and in his book, I love this game. He describes how he's only 5'8", but he could easily dunk a basketball. Showed all of the height and just brought it down.
I mean, that ball, it was the apex of his leap. It was the highest he could jump, and he timed that jump perfectly and caught that ball right before it hit the wall. Yep. And then doubled the guy off first, too.
Almost doubled up Pendleton on first.
Yeah, don't forget that.
Because he couldn't believe he was going to catch it, and he already rounded second.
Right.
Yeah, he was almost to third base, and he had like halfway to third base, I think, and he had to go back, retouch second.
Yep.
Go back, and nearly got doubled off.
Right.
So, yeah, Erickson gave up some real bums, but he pitched into the 7th inning. Bless his
that
soul.
Play if he had doubled him off. Oh, my God. That would have been the greatest play in baseball history.
So, in the 5th inning, that's when Erickson gave up 2. And then the Twins came back and scored 1 on Avery in the 5th. He had a walk and then 2 very hard sac flies to score that run and get the 3rd run. So prior to the 6th inning, they go to Kitty Cat. He was a sideline guy.
Jim Cobb to the layperson.
And he was talking about how Erickson is getting weaker. And Erickson comes out for the 6th and goes 1, 2, 3. Sit them all down, ready for the 7th.
Well, that's why he got out for the 7th again, because he showed he had life again. But yeah.
Well, he came out, I think, right after the first batter in the 7th.
Yeah, because he gave up a hit or a walk right away. He didn't get any outs in the 7th, but still, the fact that they were willing to put him out that long in the game, considering where he was at, that was good for him.
Mm-hmm.
He came through when they needed him to. It was touchy, but. So this game goes to extra innings, and it's just nobody wants to win. And at any moment, this World Series could be over, and we could be all done, and we're all going to be just depressed.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So in the 10th inning, the Braves hit and run right into an unassisted double play. And the Twins, so both teams only had, I think the Twins went down 1, 2, 3 in the 10th. So there was only 3 batters aside in the 10th
I don't
inning.
think we had a ton of opportunities.
No, but then in the 11th, Bream led off with a single. So they put their
El
first
Cid.
man.
Another great mustache, by the way.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. Not good knees, but a great stash. So the Braves had their leadoff runner on in both the 10th and the 11th innings. They put a pinch runner in for old Sid, and that guy was gunned down at second. That
Not
was
old
Harper's.
Sid. El Cid. We called him El Cid Bream.
Okay.
El Cid, come on.
I don't know why.
So that pickoff in the 11th inning, Game 6, was Harper's first pickoff of the series.
Really?
Yeah, well, he was not known for throwing out guys.
No.
Yeah,
No.
he was not.
But yeah, that was a huge play. That was
Right.
awesome.
So
Brian
the
Harper,
Braves,
man. I'm with
the
you, Pete.
Braves
That-
again only had 3 batters in the 11th inning, despite getting their leadoff guy on both times.
Mhm.
So the game is right there, still for the taking, potentially for the Braves. So what do? Turn to Charlie Leibrandt.
Right. Against this crappy hitter that was
against-
sent up in the 11th inning. Who is that
Against
guy?
the guy that finished second in the MVP voting that probably should have won that year, Kirby Puckett.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Pete,
So
you wanna
I read
take
it-
away?
I read a thing that Kirby told Chili he was going up to bunt.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's the story. I'm going to
Did you
bunt, and
see
you're
it?
going to hit a home run and get me in.
Right. And Chili said, just hit it over the damn wall. And Puckett went up there and he took 3 pitches.
Yep, he did.
Which Puckett never did. He
Never
was the most
does.
aggressive hitter ever.
Right.
He was always swinging, and you'd get frustrated by how much he was swinging sometimes at some terrible pitches.
Yep.
But
4th pitch.
Lee Brandt
Good
leaves
Lord.
one out over the
And
plate,
we'll see
and
ya
the rest is
tomorrow
history.
night.
Exactly.
The fist bump as Puckett is rounding second.
Oh,
Charlie
the
Lee
celebration
Brandt
is etched in lore, literally, because there's a
Yes.
statue outside Target Field of him doing that fist bump.
And then the pictures of Charlie Leibrandt
The head
walking
held
off the
low
field
again.
with
Just
his
walking
hand,
off.
his head in his face, his
Oh, God,
head
it's
in his
sad.
hands. Yeah. The agony
And then-
of defeat.
Yeah.
Not just that, but then you've got all the footage of them celebrating and Puckett hugging Tom Kelly, and
Yep.
just, oh my God, the emotion is so great there. Did you guys, when he hit that, did you think that was a home run right away?
I knew it was
I
going to
don't
be a
know.
well-hit ball. If it was going to be
Right.
a
That's
home
what I
run,
thought.
it wasn't. It was going to be a double at least. I
Compared to
thought
like
that
Chili Davis's bombs that he would launch, it
Yeah.
when he first, every time I see it still, it looks like he kind of reaches for it.
right.
It looks like it could be off the end. It just doesn't look like some of Puckett's big, strong home runs. But I mean, you right away you heard the crowd and you heard everybody. I mean, so you knew. But like, my first instinct was not that was a home run. And
And
Well,
it was
I'm
a pretty deep part of the field too. Actually,
yeah, it is.
It was.
It's way deep.
That was like, that was no man's land out there
So
in the Metrodome. So
That's
well,
what I
it's
remember
extra
about that.
innings and you're the home team. So you know a ball up, if it's up and you think it's hit, like you think right off the bat, like it's going. Like like you're hoping to God that it's going and this game can be over and dramatic. So I don't know what I was thinking at that point, but Jack Buck's voice got pretty high pretty quick.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, this has got to do it. So
I mean, it only takes a second for the ball to fly out and hear the crowd, but that first impact,
the
usually you can
impact,
tell.
Yep.
And I didn't see it, and I still
did.
have a hard time believing he hit it
I
that
knew
far.
that it was a well hit. It was obviously a well hit ball when you hit it.
Right.
When you see it, whether or not it was
So-
going to be a home run.
But you know how Puckett would crush some, and he would do the old bat flip. He had that awesome bat flip.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
You know, he didn't.
Yeah.
It wasn't anything like that. It was a different kind of a swing compared to a lot of his home runs.
yeah,
Right.
yeah.
So obviously, we survived this game. We're going to win the World Series now. It's done. Now nobody thinks
Right.
we're going to lose anymore.
Right. Well, because the Braves were sending up a crappy pitcher and John Smoltz to
No,
start game
John
7.
Smoltz says, "Hold my beer."
Right. Well, because John Smoltz pitched the season and NLCS clinching games. So
Oh,
he's
did he?
oh yeah. So you got Jack Morris, who
And he's going up against his idol. He wants to beat
Right.
him so bad.
So you got Jack Morris, who started the season. He started the All-Star game. He starts the ALCS, and he starts the World Series, and he won them all. Up against a guy who closes out things, right? Like, I mean, Smoltz
Oh, it's the
has
perfect
been
Game 7
unbelievable.
pitching matchup. It's just
Right.
amazing.
Yep.
So it's scoreless, but do you know the point where this game really begins?
The 3-6-3 double or the
No, that's too
3-2-3
late.
double
There's
play.
a moment before that where, and it's Jack Morris on the mound. I don't know if you got in your notes, Gifford.
Well, I've got a note early in the game
Okay,
for this
go ahead.
one. So Lonnie Smith, leadoff batter, comes up to the plate and he offers his hand to Harper for a handshake.
I remember that.
I remember
Yes.
that.
Which
Yes, I
is,
remember
and
that
of
too.
course Harper shakes his hand. You know, I mean, what a wonderful
That's pretty cool.
gesture.
I mean, and it's
of
not just that they had the
sportsmanship.
collision, but I mean, coming
Right.
in the heat of this World Series at that moment to have two guys,
Yep.
that's like the coolest thing in sports right there.
And
I
they
had
are
a conversation
they are
about
former
this moment.
teammates. Yep.
I had a conversation about this moment with former catcher Terry Steinbach, and I brought that up. I thought, because we were just talking about the 91 team, and I brought that moment up, and he goes, well, that actually wasn't that big of a deal. It's just I'm like, thanks for ruining the moment here.
It is.
Well, the announcers were like, have you ever seen that before?
Well,
two
Terry
teams,
Steinbach,
no.
wow, la-ti-da, Mr.
two teams that can recognize the games they've played and the respect they had for each other. This series, you'll never convince me that any World Series ever has been or will be better than this.
I don't know. He blew it off. It was
and you think about
Terry
it,
Steinbach can go to hell.
he was very nice to me the one night that.
Nah, he can't because he's from Minnesota too, so we love him.
Players.
So Lonnie Smith, the leadoff hitter for the Braves, is the one that bowled over the Twins catcher. So Dan Gladden, the leadoff hitter for the Twins, is also the one who came in spikes high at Olsen. I was wondering what Gladden was thinking in the bottom half of the inning. Like, crap, do I got to go up and shake this guy's hand? Because that's not coming out of Gladden. Like, no way, no how.
It's just whatever Terry Steinbach says. The symbolism of that, because it wasn't like the game before. That happened in what, Game 3?
Yeah, it was
the symbolism of that showing what has been happening in the series to this point. It's
both just saying good luck to each other, and it's great sportsmanship.
You can use hyperbole in sports all the time, but this series you can't. This is the series. It's amazing.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Right. So, well,
anyway, moving on.
My notes on the game. I mean, both pitchers are perfect in the first inning.
Oh, I want to jump ahead to the fifth inning.
Well, let me see if I got anything here. Go, you go ahead and start.
So in the fifth inning, the Braves get their first real threat. It's first and third and one out, and they got Terry Pendleton and Ron Gant coming up. So here it is. This is the moment, and Morris gets Pendleton to pop out, so not anywhere near deep enough to score a run, and then he strikes out Gant looking. Yep. And Morris leaves the mound with the biggest mid-game fist pump you've ever seen. And this game is on, and Jack Morris ain't losing this thing. And his reaction there just gives me chills every time I see it.
Right.
It's the fifth inning, and you can tell how important every at-bat is at this point.
Right. Absolutely. Well, and then Jack comes right back in the sixth and the seventh and goes 1, 2, 3.
Oh, yeah. He's getting stronger.
He sat him down. Smoltz also perfect in the seventh.
Few things happened in the eighth inning, though, right?
Now we're in the eighth.
I don't know. I don't know about the eighth. What happened in the eighth?
This could be one of the craziest innings of all time.
Right.
So I foreshadowed earlier Lonnie Smith.
Mm-hmm.
So one of you guys can take it away if you want.
Well, he starts off with a bloop leadoff single. Right? I mean, it wasn't like a hard, he like half swings. And it just happens to end up
it's a lucky hit.
First. Yeah, lucky hit. So that's the way it starts.
So he's on first, and now is it who's up next? Is it Ron Gant? Oh, it's Pendleton. Okay.
Pendleton comes up next.
And Pendleton smokes, right? He hits it to where Kirby Puckett caught Gant's ball, but he couldn't catch this one.
No, it was in the gap. It got all the way to the wall. He has to dig it off the wall. He doesn't get it clean. So we got Lonnie
easily any runner in the game scores.
Yes. Yep.
Right.
So Lonnie Smith on his way to second happens to take a look at Chuck Knobloch and Greg Gagne, who are pulling the old Deke double play where they're going to get Lonnie out at second and throw on to first. So Lonnie round second stops.
And he just stands there.
Holds up. He holds up.
You still think he's watching the ball. He's got to have enough time still where he could go score.
I think anybody would have scored on that. I mean, yeah.
But he
I didn't
just
get
totally
that.
loses the ball, and he has a second huge base running error, and he ends up on third, and Pendleton's in second. There's still only
Pendleton's
one
on
out.
second.
So, I mean, they're still in great position.
No,
but they
there's
should,
0 outs.
Oh, 0 outs. That's
Yeah.
right. But they should be ahead 1-0 at
Right.
this point.
So now you've got Gant and Justice are the next two batters.
Part of the order. Pendleton,
Right.
Gant, Justice.
So Gant, he turns on a pitch and just fouls it up the line to Hrbie, or just hits a weak grounder to Hrbie.
Very weak.
And was that the play where Hrbie grabbed it and just trotted up to him and
Yeah, I
tagged him?
think so. Yeah.
Right.
It was so weak. And so at this point, though, Tom Kelly comes to the mound.
Right.
And Morris is just staring him down like this. And Kelly will say he was not coming out to take him out of the game. He was coming out to talk strategy. What do you want to do? He wants to make sure that he goes over it, but he's not taking Jack Morris out of the game.
Mm-hmm.
So they walk Justice.
He says now, probably. Who knows what actually happened?
No, I believe
he
him.
says.
So
They walk Justice to load the bases, and then Pete, this is the greatest play. Oh my God, this play.
Right.
So this is where a play that almost never happens. You plenty of times see a 5-4-3 double play.
That's the thing. It's
6-4-3. But to see a 3-2-3, which to the layperson is a grounder to the first baseman, back to the catcher,
Force
and
out
back
at
to
home.
first base. Yes, you
Right.
get the force out, so you prevent the run, and then you double them off at first base, and you still have enough time to get the batter out.
Right.
At
Because it's
first base,
Sid Bream running to first, so he's crawling there basically.
Speed isn't a factor.
As much as I watch baseball, I've maybe seen that play happen 5 times or less in my entire life, if that. And that was the perfect
But it
moment
was
for
made
that
to order, and you guys can all picture Hrbie, right? All in one motion.
Swatted
He
down.
catches the ball, starts to leave the base, and he's just yanking his hand back and forth, just like Morris did. And the sweet relief comes over the entire state because that game was over, or we were behind at least in that inning, and the most ridiculous circumstances.
I just remember at this time
that fist bump,
being in that house. And Brad, you remember the new house that we had in Tyler that we lived in for 4 years. This is where I'm at at the time. And like every commercial break, my dad and I, we just had to go. We went into the kitchen and we're just like pulling our hair out and like getting water or whatever. We're just like, oh my God, what is going on here?
It's one thing to have a close tie game, but it's 0-0.
This was just
every pitch
tense as it got.
So here's the one thing I'll talk about again with my thought on the announcers pulling for Atlanta. So the bottom of the 7th inning, Chili Davis hits into a double play to end the inning. And their comment was, you'll never see a better double play than that. And at the end of the top of the 8th inning to end it is the most ridiculous double play. A half inning later, and they come back from break, and all they could say is, I don't really know what to say about that.
Again, in their defense, it wasn't like a great double play. It was an unbelievable, unlikely double play. It wasn't like anybody made a spectacular defensive play.
The moment that it happened, and it's bases loaded. You get the force at home and throw back to first to kill the inning. It's unfreaking believable. And these guys just go, I don't know really to say about that. Right.
It was in a similar situation.
You're pissed that the Braves didn't score because you got money on the game.
The only one that it's not even anywhere near it, but the other one that comes to mind when I think about that play, I think about game 163, I think against the Tigers when Joe Nathan got the line out to shortstop when he really needed it. I think it was the 8th inning. Do you remember that play?
I don't. But I remember that being one of the greatest baseball games ever played.
He gets at some point he gets a line out. I think the bases were loaded, but anyway, that's nothing like. I could be off on my facts a little bit there, but it seems like that. I know that there was a line out double play.
Well, you're probably right. There's a lot of great plays in this game.
Anyway, go on. We're going back to 91 here.
So the bottom of the 8th inning is just as dramatic.
Yeah,
'Cause
we
get
have
a
our
leadoff-
chance too.
We get a leadoff single, and then we've got Gladden with a fly out. We do a hit and run with Knobloch. So we got runners first and third with one out.
Yep, because Knobloch, perfect. He hit an opposite field single.
Mhm.
Perfect hit and run.
Yep.
And
so
then Hrbie's up.
Puckett gets intentionally walked to load the bases.
Right.
And Hrbie,
which is very rare
lines-
again, though, because first base isn't open.
right.
But they don't want Puckett.
But
They
it's
want
Puckett,
Hrbie, so they do it
especially
anyway.
after what happened last night.
Well, and you want Hrbie because Hrbie is hitting like 118 for the series. He's just god awful. So he hits a line drive to Lemke, who catches it.
A
and
weak
doubles
line
up.
drive, but still,
Weak.
it's right to a guy where all you had to do is just take 2 steps to the base for a pretty unlikely double play again.
Right. So this is the first time I hear Jack Buck say the Braves got a break. The first time, bottom of the 8th inning, game 7, they finally got a break. So, yeah.
The ninth inning's pretty ho-hum, right? Nothing really happens there.
Yeah, not a whole lot. Jack's 1, 2, 3 in the 9th.
Yep.
Mowed him right down.
But
and
everybody obviously assumes that's it. Great game, Jack. You're done.
Actually, no. The 9th inning's crazy because Chile got a leadoff single. Then Harper pushes a bunt between the pitcher and first base and
Did Mack
reaches.
hit a double play too?
Let me see. Harper hit the single. Mack grounds into a double play.
Yeah. He had 2 hits in this game, though.
Right. But then Pags walked, and then we got the Serrano comes up and strikes out on 5 pitches.
Serrano, that's the at bat where Paul Serrano had a big.
But
chance.
I mean, they had it. They had a
This
threat.
guy's gonna win the game for us.
Yeah. Right. But then what does Jack do again in the 10th?
First of all, nobody can believe Jack Morris is standing on the mound in the 10th because that doesn't happen.
You don't do that. Even in that era, you did not pitch 10 innings.
But you see him out there and you're like,
Certainly
oh God,
would
this
not.
is awesome. I can't wait to see this.
So Jack Morris in
and he
the
mows him down.
6th, 7th, and 9th, and 10th he has 1, 2, 3 innings.
Yeah.
There was a part of me that was going, are you sure about this, TK?
Well, yeah, I think everybody was probably saying that, including Tom Kelly. Well, Tom Kelly, his famous quote was, he couldn't take him out. He's like, whatever happens, happens. You go get him.
It's just a game.
Man.
Go out there.
It's just that's it. It's just a game. You go get him.
Right.
And I was never a big fan of Tom Kelly, but my God, that's a pretty awesome quote there.
You got to respect the balls that he had in that game.
Right.
So I think the most underrated play in the entire series is Dan Gladden's leadoff at bat in the 10th because he hits a blooper.
Broken
and
back.
It's a hit. It's a legit hit. It's not like anybody lost it in the ceiling or anything, but it's a single. And that dude, you brought up his speed, Pete. He just takes off and goes balls out and gets a double out of nothing and just barely
should have been a
it.
single.
And that's the play that won the game. Because if he's on first, I bet you we don't score.
He was always a pretty
agree.
aggressive base runner, as I remember Dan Gladden. And
So it didn't
there's
take
things
much
to like
after
about him.
Yeah, after he hit second base, it didn't take much for them to win that game. We load the bases on a walk.
Well, we had Knobloch had a sack bunt to move him over to third, and then they walked Kirby and Hrbie.
You have to load him up for a double play.
Yep. And then Larkin.
Kirby and Hrbie.
That's still, I wouldn't, I don't know. That's still a risky move to walk the bases loaded in that situation because now you got no room for error. If you were to, walk the next guy,
but none of those guys matter. I mean,
well, that's what I'm saying though. You cannot walk him though. If you load the bases, now you cannot walk him.
Yeah, it's a little pressure on the pitcher.
Gene Larkin wasn't walking because the very first pitch he saw, he threw it into deep left.
Yep.
And Gladden comes trotting home.
The Twins are going to win the World Series.
Huge smile on his face, and he stomps on home plate, and it's over.
Right.
And
so
we have never seen anything this great since.
Here's the thing I don't understand with that. Nobody I understand walking Kirby because he's killing you. He's doing whatever he wants to do. But Hrbie, like what you're getting with Hrbie. He can't hit anything.
All he's got to do is hit a fly ball. I mean,
but here's the thing.
He's still a very, very good hitter.
Even in the celebration, he couldn't hit Chili Davis's hand on a high five.
Oh God.
Oh my God. Come on, that's it. That's what you're going it on. All right.
But
He had to
with
set himself
Larkin-
up for that joke, I guess.
But with
This
Larkin, you
whole
don't know what
episode has been leading up to that comment.
I got it marked down.
4 pages of notes just to get there.
But with Larkin, he was 1 for 3 in the series. Like he was batting .333. Like
He's
he
a
could do
bench guy
something.
with 3 at bats.
But Hrbie couldn't hit anything.
Ken Hrbie is a borderline, I'm not going to say that. He's
Not
one of the
in that
best players
series.
in the Twins' history, and he
Yes,
had a
but
great
not in
year.
that
He's a
series.
fearsome hitter.
But not in that series.
Well, no.
Well,
but
it doesn't matter. I mean,
I
So-
think
I don't-
any manager is going to take his chances with all those options at double plays with Gene Larkin
Yeah.
over one of the Twins' best hitters.
Well, and that adds the force out at home. If it's
Exactly
it's
what we did in the
driven-
eighth. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, I get where he's coming from, but man, if I saw Hrbie coming up, I would have pitched to him there. So Atlanta left 8 runners on, and the final stat said the Twins left 12, but I don't know if that includes the 3 guys that are on base after the game-winning hit.
I don't
So,
know.
I mean,
I don't think it does because I think
It-
that you'd have to get out of the inning. They technically,
Right.
shouldn't.
They weren't left.
I don't
Right.
think. Right. They
I
weren't.
mean, we
left on
had
base.
guys on throughout the game here and there. We
Right.
only had a couple real threats, but we had guys on.
Right, but that's the thing. If you look at the box score and you see 1-0 in the 10th, you look at that and go, well, that's a boring game. But there were
And then you look at
There
it,
were
it
love
says
one
Game
singles.
7 World Series. Oh, wait a minute. That's the greatest outcome in history of baseball.
right. But what I'm saying is there were base hits, there were steals, there were
All
hit
kinds of
and
drama.
runs, there were double plays. I mean, there were plenty of people on the bases.
The
and
2
it
best
was
fist pumps I've
amazing.
ever seen in my life.
So, right. So yeah, that's pretty much all I had.
That was fun. That was fun.
Yeah. Unbelievable series.
All right. So,
I
you
just
ready
want
to go on to your
say
final topic,
What-
Pete? Or
one last comment about this
Okay.
whole thing. Did you feel in this conversation or any of your review of this, do you get a little bit nostalgic for the Metrodome?
I do.
I do too.
I will say it was a whole of a venue, but a
Yep.
massive home field advantage.
Well, and great memories.
especially in baseball.
And we grew up 3 hours away on farms. You always knew the game would be played. There would,
Yes.
that's
Right.
the thing about a
Right.
dome. There's no rainouts. Now,
Right.
once you know the Metrodome and you know where to sit and buy tickets, and it's not so bad for a Twins game, but there are some of the worst
No.
seats you could ever imagine there.
Yes.
And
Well, and the concourses are always packed.
Well,
If
yeah.
you're trying to get to a bathroom, you got to go through everybody that's standing. I mean,
Although-
it's just-
the concourses at Target Field aren't much better. I mean, all these new stadiums, they're supposed to have these great new big open concourses, and it's still just a mess anywhere you go. So
right.
it
Well,
wasn't
there's a
that
few
bad.
people there.
All right. Well, we were asked by Pete to create our. He's back. You want to take it, Pete?
Yeah. So sorry, just had to close the door. People
Probably
coming-
might lose you.
keep coming in and out. No, you're not going to lose me. So I thought it would be apropos on this episode to finish it with your top 5 greatest, happiest sports moments of your lifetime. So let's start with Gifford.
All right. Well, after this great discussion and a great team, these moments don't quite measure up. But I've got 2 from. Well, I'll start at the earliest one. I didn't really rank these. So 87 Twins win. Just amazing. Ozzie Smith grounding out in the top of the 9th, throw over to Hrbie for the out for the win was amazing. I got 2 from 1990. I got the UNLV basketball team wins the national championship. I loved that team. I remember writing a big
Really?
article about it in newspapers we had to make for Mrs. Mecklenburg's class.
I did too. I didn't
Wow.
like UNLV, but I wrote an article about that same game. I think I still have that in my. in the
We should
box.
go. We should. It's a conflicting viewpoints on the same
Right.
game.
Oh, I loved it. I absolutely loved that game.
I think my
hated-
title was something about Rebels massacre Duke in championship game.
Well, and I hated Duke so much, and I just love that UNLV team. Also, 1990 RTR football over Minnesota was an enormous game. Minnesota always won. And
I was on the
we were
sidelines for that, not as a player, but
I was a videographer for that.
it was one moment where I was happy to be on the sidelines for the game doing the role I was doing.
Sure. Then we'll follow that with the 91 Twins. Obviously, we covered that pretty well tonight. On a personal level, I hit a hole-in-one on my 36th birthday. That was a pretty exciting sporting moment for myself.
I can't say that about me.
Right? The only thing I got over you on a golf course.
I get it.
And then the last one, I brought it up before on the show at a proud parent moment. Last year, my son's team won the Squirt A District Championship with him in net. So that was very exciting as well. So those are my 6.
We'll let you go last, right, Pete?
Yeah.
Okay, so when I made my list, I ended up with 8.
Yep.
So I eliminated 3 for different reasons. And so these are my honorable mentions. So one of the greatest moments of my sporting fan life was the 1997 Gophers when they beat Clemson and UCLA, the Sweet 16 and Final 8 to go to the Final Four. I mean, that was... it was, and they were 2 of the greatest games. The Clemson game was like one of these World Series games, double overtime.
We've got a match.
So, but I took it off of my list because those games were later vacated and don't count anymore.
They didn't actually happen, Brad.
No, okay.
So that was how they're still part of my list, but that's how I took them out of the top 5. The next one, similarly, maybe the single greatest moment I've ever seen in sports was the Minneapolis Miracle when Case Keenum hit Stephon Diggs to beat the Saints in the playoffs. I mean, that's the most unlikely play I've ever seen at any time. But the way they lost the next week in just the most ugly fashion, it just took a lot of the fun out of it. It's still a great memory, but it's like, whatever. And then I had 2 personal ones, or not personal, but 2 high school related ones. And one of those was for myself, so I put that on my own list. The other one, though, you brought up the Minnesota football game, which was a great choice, Giff. But I wrote down I was trying to think of the best basketball games because we had such great teams.
So many great teams.
When RTR beat Slayton in the regional tournament, led by Trevor Winter, the best player in the state, who was going to just
former
dominate
Timberwolf player.
Yep. So that was an incredible game.
Former Gopher,
we were all sophomores. We had first row seats. Oh my God. In that great Montevideo gym, it was the greatest atmosphere you could ever have in a high school game. But that was an honorable mention because I wasn't directly involved. All right. So the 5 that I did pick, the 2019 Gophers Penn State football game. That whole day was the greatest days of my life. The tailgating, the game itself, the pressure on them to pull through finally in a big game. I mean, you couldn't beat it. And I've been a season ticket holder for so many years, and that was finally one of the real big payoffs. Number 4, Pete knows, Gifford, I don't know if you know or remember this. I got to attend the 1987 Game 6 in the World Series. And so it was this last-minute thing. Some friend of my brother's who went to the U at the time had 2 tickets and either couldn't go or didn't want to go because they weren't even a baseball fan. And he called the day before and said, do you think Grandpa would want to go? And my mom was like, well, what about your brother? And my aunt and uncle happened to be going to Minneapolis for something, and they drove me up that day. And so the moment, though, this is a great World Series game, but Ken Hrbie hit a grand slam.
Hit a grand slam.
Ken Hrbie. And I was there in person. That's probably the greatest in-person, major sporting thing I've ever seen. Obviously, they won the game, went on to win the World Series. Number 3, if you know me, I've already mentioned the Gophers once. Gopher basketball is my very first. Well, the Twins, I guess, would have been first. But Gopher basketball was my big passion. And my first game was in 1989. And my brother took me, and I'd never been to Williams Arena before. And they were playing the number 4 ranked Iowa Hawkeyes. And we weren't ranked, but we were kind of up and coming. Clem Haskins' 3rd year. We were terrible the first 2 years. But this was a chance we could really be good. And they beat them on a tip-in at the buzzer. Jim Schickenjansky. And a fan for life was born that day. I got to sit in the student section with all these college kids. I was 13 years old. It was incredible. And that is still my favorite sports venue ever. Number 2 is it's game 6 and 7 of 91. But if I'm going to pick a moment, it's Puckett's home run. I mean, you can't.
Mm-hmm.
That's the moment. And then so for number 1, I have one great achievement in my life in sports, and I won the subsession golf tournament as a senior. I had kind of a disappointing year as a golfer that year, but I won that tournament and came within an eyelash of going to state. And so for me, that was really great. At least I can say I did that.
That's awesome, man. I'm proud of you.
Pete.
So my moments are already mentioned. Was my number 5 is Gopher basketball over UCLA. I'm going to count it, even though it didn't happen. I'm still counting it.
I count it. Hey, that's another one I have on a homemade DVD that I still watch every once in a while.
I was with you at your place when that happened.
Yep. Both those games.
For number 4, I actually put as a tie. I had Gophers versus Wisconsin and Gophers versus Penn State. Very similar atmospheres, big wins. Wisconsin just this past year. But I think Penn State was because I'm a bit more recent of a season ticket holder than Brad, you are. So that was my first experience as on a storm the field kind of game. And then it was that kind of game again against Wisconsin. The reason it was tough to pick is because it was Wisconsin. And so Penn State
not as big of a game, but
Right. But the fact that it was against Wisconsin made it that much better.
That's right.
Minneapolis Miracle was my number 3, which you've already talked about. And then I just had my number 2 and my number 1, pretty obvious. My number 2 actually was the 91 World Series. And again, if I had to pick a moment, it's really, really difficult between, and I just had it as its one line item, but I would have to say Puckett's home run as well, because that was so exciting. I was running around the house when that happened. After I remember actually, though, the better memories of the World Series itself, like each individual game, I remember the 1987 series better. And that's why I put that as my number 1. And especially when they won it, I remember just jumping around the house and I just couldn't believe it. And I was 11 years old. The 91 World Series, after they won it, I just kind of sat there and I just breathed a sigh of relief. I wasn't, I was just like, oh my God, thank God. We got it done and it's over. It's it's like I just run a marathon.
Same though,
but
Pete.
87.
I remember the 87 when they won. I can still picture our den on our farmhouse, and I was on the couch with my mom, and when they won, I got up and jumped over somebody that was sitting on the floor, and I can still picture that exact moment, just like you.
Yes, I can too. I guess you guys threw a couple of personal moments. I don't have very many personal moments in terms of athletic achievement, as you guys are well aware. But for me,
but you attended a lot of great games, like we talked about.
I did, but if we're talking our own personal things, for me, this was a big deal. For anybody else, not that big of a deal. But when I played midget baseball in summer rec, we all played, and it was practice, not even a game, but practice. I took one out of the ballpark at Russell. And awesome. For me, that was a big deal because I was always striking out, and I was just the last guy on the team you'd ever want to put in a game.
And that's not a hitter's park.
I just got a home run.
Yep.
It was an opposite field home run to the top of the hill. I just got a hold of it, and it was the aluminum bat. I remember it was another guy on a team. I borrowed his bat, and I loved the bat, and I just got it on the fat part of it, and it sent it out. So for me, that was a big deal.
They inspected that bat and found cork in it.
Great, thanks, Brad. They found cork in the aluminum bat.
That's the joke.
Yeah. Well, and I could also mention scoring the 99th point in the first time 99 points was scored in a basketball game for RTR. Not 100, but 99.
I made one tackle in a JV football game, and it saved the game. If I don't make that tackle, we lose. So there is that too.
Pete, the other thing about those 2 Gopher football games, I don't know if you remember exactly, but so the Wisconsin game, we won. I mean, it wasn't like an exciting finish. We had the game wrapped up at the end. But do you remember the Penn State game? They got the ball back with a chance to win, and they were driving all the way down the field. And we
Yep.
actually had to intercept it in the end zone to find. So there was that one moment of just sheer relief for like, no way can we lose this game. It can't happen
Right.
again.
Right.
And they didn't. They didn't. It was great.
All right.
Sweet.
Oh,
Well, that's our
man.
longest episode ever. So hopefully people
Probably.
like the
I'm
twins.
not going to. Yeah. They will. They'll just reminisce in the memories, but they're especially going to love the grand finale, which is Preacher Row at the end of every episode. Please make sure, by the way, that you go on to our Buy Me a Coffee link and feel free to contribute if you'd like to become a classmate. And anything else to add, boys? Otherwise, if not, I'll
We'll
throw
be
on a little
back to
Preacher
our
Row.
usual real pop culture next week too. So
Well, and I wanted to give a quick shout out to my friends Matt and Dina. They like to listen down in Fergus Falls and have put a few shout outs on Twitter back and forth.
I was going to say, I know Dina from social media. I appreciate anybody that talks to us, and I noticed she was a friend of yours, so I appreciate you too, Dina.
So they listen every week. So thank you for that.
Excellent.
All right.
Okay, here you go, Preacher Row.
And we'll see you tomorrow night.
Standing on my own 2 feet. No one's here to comfort me. Sorry for what I have done. Sorry that your son is gone. 7 steps and it will be my last. Hands tied, tell me on my back. I turn and I look to you. I'm scared, but there's nothing I can do.